So I am a professional cyclist. I mostly race mountain bikes, but I also race road bike, cyclocross, other disciplines as well. I graduated in May from the University of Colorado Boulder, and there I raced for the cycling team. And now I race independently for a separate professional team, and yeah. I would say that similar to many spaces in the world today, there's kind of a push for people to start recognizing that there are a lot of inequalities. And I would definitely say cycling is behind because the sport's still so unequal, but I guess other sports are unequal as well. But I've had a lot of really interesting conversations with so many men in the sport lately about how they feel about this push for empowerment or equity or equality. And I think there's always kind of feelings of resentment when people have their privilege checked, because for example, there's one athlete, her name is Ellen Noble, and she started this movement called Bunny Hop the Patriarchy, because there's this thing that you do in cyclocross where you have to usually get off your bike and run over these barriers, and it's it's like a barrier that you run over, and it's part of the race. And traditionally many men would jump the barriers on their bike and not get off, because you can do whatever you want, you just have to get over them. But very, very few women would do that, and Ellen practiced a ton for a whole year so that she could do it. And it's definitely challenging to do, but no women were really doing it, mostly because no women were doing it. And no one had kind of come out, or no one had done it in such a public space. And so she started bunny hopping the barriers and started this movement called Bunny Hop the Patriarchy, which is tied in with the whole thing. And it's been awesome to watch young girls, masters, elite women, people all over the world. I saw Ellen do this, I too can hop these barriers. And it's obviously just a piece of wood, but it's also a metaphorical barrier for being in the sport and being more creating this sense of empowerment and equality that women can do this, and they can take on something that's more traditionally men's trick. I feel if women were represented equally as men are in the sport, there would be more bottom-up support and consistency for women in racing, because especially in different disciplines, if you look at professional road cycling, men have a mandated salary based on this international cycling organization that mandates how much they have to be paid, and women don't have any mandated salary. So there are lots of women in the sport that are actually not paid, and it's their professional careers.
Wait, women don't get paid at all?
Some of them do, but there's no mandate. For men, they have to be paid a certain amount if they're racing at the certain level of professional road cycling. But the same level of women's road cycling doesn't have a minimum pay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
So that can be a man's full job.
Yeah.
And a woman, there's no a woman, it's a hobby.
Exactly.
Oh, that's messed up.
Yeah. One thing that stands out to me is just very telling that there's so much room for improvement is, I guess there's two specific instances that I think about. One is, both are related to the Tour de France. So the Tour de France is a big race that happens. It's one of the most watched road races that happens every year, and it's only men. There's only a men's race, and then there's a shorter version that's the Tour de France for women, but it's only a few days compared to the whole month, which is the men's race. And I was at Collegiate Road Nationals 2 years ago, and there was this keynote speaker at this big dinner before the race, and he had raced professionally in 10 years in the past, and he was talking about dreams and aspirations and typical keynote speaker things, and then he ended his speech with, "And maybe someday you too can race in the Tour de France." And we're just hello, we're here too. So and things like that happen all the time, where it's people just have such a misconception, and yes, maybe I don't know, know, 70% of the people at that race were men, maybe like 65, because there are more men in the sport, but just completely disregarding the fact that like so many people in the room would never even have the opportunity to race in that event because there's not a women's equivalent. And so with the Tour de France, though, there's this group of women every year that ride every stage of the tour. So a stage is like each day, so they ride the day, like the route that the men are going to ride the day before every single day of the race. And it's like this growing media coverage, and this year there were like a few dozen women that did the entire race as like in protest, saying like, we are capable of this, like this is possible, we just don't have the opportunity to do so. Did you do it?
Oh my gosh, yes.